when you're broke and you have no money, starting anything in real estate is insanely difficult. And that's honestly where I find myself in today. So this episode today, for those who don't know, welcome back to the Cameron Hodge Show. And this show, I'm talking everything about real estate business, my journey through that process. I don't talk about anything I don't understand. And if I do talk about it and I don't understand it, I'm either bringing in a guest for you to listen to and learn from, who knows more about me in that topic, or you get to watch me work through my problems and stuff along this journey. Honestly, the biggest thing is not only just helping people like yourselves who are watching this understand that you're not the only one in this process, but also that, hey, maybe I can give you some tips and tricks, and hey, we all have stuff we learned that you may have not learned yet, and hopefully I can help you break through that even faster. Also, the cool thing is my kids hopefully can hear this in the future. They get to look back. I mean, imagine especially being a man, imagine your father being able to look back in his 20s and be able to see like how he progressed throughout his life, how he changed, and how he worked through problems and thought about things. I mean, this literally is just a documentation of my journey for my kids, and it's like one of the greatest things I can ever imagine for them when they get older. And I hope that they find joy in this as well when they get older. So today's episode is a solo one, and I'm starting another journey. And I actually, about a month or so ago, I did a episode regarding why I chose business over investing. And funny enough, opportunities, I think I've mentioned this show a couple times, and I'm going to mention it again. Opportunities always show themselves randomly in life, where out of nowhere, all of a sudden you have an opportunity and a door opens. And, I've tried to get myself trained to the point where if it makes sense and fits inside my realm and my values and what I'm trying to do, then I am going to go and I'm going to try and do that. And one of those things actually recently happened for me. Funny enough, I've held out of real estate investing, and I've gone down to being an agent, and in the process of obviously this whole channel currently, I don't know, I might change it again, I'm not quite sure, but the whole purpose of this channel and the show is like showcasing my journey and what I'm learning and stuff like that, but it's all revolved around as well with our company, Tired Agents, and it's a company devoted to helping right now just real estate agents build and investors build six-figure businesses while working less time. Because for those of you like me, I have 3 kids. I'm 29, I have 3 kids. Maybe you still work a full-time job or whatever. And the whole purpose is to give you the tools necessary and the mindset necessary, or whatever it needs to be able to have you to continue to, increase your wealth while not having to give up your entire life in the process. Look, what's funny is everyone wants to be a millionaire, and I think that's a great goal to have. But the reality is even 500,000 is like 42,000 a month. And I sat down with my business partner on this a couple days ago, and it randomly hit me, and I'm like, dude, imagine just even making $500,000 a year, right? Let's say after taxes, you're taking home 500, right? It's about 42,000 a month. It's crazy, right? That literally in most states will put you at the top 1%. States like California and things like that, if you're in the big metros, sure, it won't put you in the top 1%, but it's still damn freaking good. And that's a lot of fucking money. And I mean, imagine what you could do with that. I mean, even increasing what I do now a little bit, I mean, I could pay my mother-in-law's, her mortgage payment. I could pay for my dad to have a house. Because what's funny is people think you need to make millions of dollars, and while what's funny is if you really have big ambitions like charities and things like that, maybe that's not a lot. When it goes pretty quick in today's world, even that amount of money. But if you are living humbly, or maybe you don't need to do crazy things, like I don't mind living in a smaller house, but maybe taking more trips and things like that, and maybe use credit card points, and there's still ways to game the system, and also being smart with real estate rentals and stuff to bring down your tax burden to where you can still have a really good life and take care of a couple people. Maybe you can't take care of your entire family, but you can sure as heck take care of a couple people who truly need it, even at that level, I think. Maybe I'm crazy. We'll see. Who knows? Maybe I'll get there one day, and this showcase, I'll be able to showcase my struggles and my mindset when I get to that point. But the whole purpose is getting started in real estate with no money. And I find myself in a situation, so I also have another episode coming up where it's going to be like from boots to boardroom. And it's a little episode I'm doing about my transition, from the military to, working 6 months as a contracting job to, my first business that kind of really failed in a nutshell, and into this next, second, third, and fourth business that I'm working myself into at this point. And I'm not some guru. I am not, but heck, this is the first year I know I'm going to be cresting 6 figures, right? And that's a huge deal. Because obviously I spent years making 50 grand a year, 50, 60 grand a year. That's it. And most of the time it was like 40, and like in the beginning of that it was like 40, and then it hit 50, and then this year is finally things are just starting to come together. And, I've started to realize as I start to crest at 6 figures is I'm like, okay, you start to look back like, all right, what am I doing? What have I learned? And is this still the path I want to go on? And what's funny is in my real estate business, I still actively take clients. I got a deal that's in escrow right now in California. I got some that are coming up in Florida. And, I use showing agents and a team to kind of get myself away from the daily grind, from leaving the house as much as possible, because, I try to be more with my family, even though mentally that's a whole nother story. And I actually, maybe I'll do an episode on that as well, where I joined a group of dads once a week to try and work through that and kind of, other business owners and trying to get better in that realm, because I've definitely been very short in a lot of ways. But I find myself, even though I'm cresting 6 figures, like in the last couple of years, I have found myself back, 40 grand in credit card debt. Now that's since been, less than 30 now, and it's continuing to go down every single month because that money is coming now, right? Like I now I'm actually making the money to where I'm like, we're still living the same amount, right? You're not overspending anymore. Like that's been good for over a year now, but it took a while to get that paid down. That credit card debt's massive. And what's funny is that it continues to go down. You're like, okay, so it's about to be gone here in a couple months. What's next? And what's funny is, right now I have multiple endeavors, and business is still a huge thing because that's what gives you the active income. But what's funny is I'm very blessed to know people, and that's why there's another episode coming out about networking as well, and how that's done. It's one of the things that I continue to do because it continues to pay itself more than any other activity I have ever done. I don't care if it's cold calling. I don't care what you do. Like that in itself, getting in the room with the right people and bringing value to them. Like it just, even they give you a small piece of value, it's just insane the value that gives. But I'm very blessed to have a friend who's very big in the credit space and learning about how business credit works, how, credit cards and how you liquidate them and how you can use those funds to buy real estate. And while, I'm right now, I'm kind of working with my other business partner, and we're working on formulating a plan to get into Section 8 rentals. And it's funny because people are like, well, I thought you were still, are you leaving the real estate thing? Because what's funny is, and I've noticed this with friends who think that, it's funny, this is about no money down. We're going to get into that, I promise. Stick with me here, or you can jump ahead if, you're impatient. What's funny is like people, like I've had comments where it's like, oh, so you got a new business going? Are you not an agent anymore? Like now you're training? Like what's going on? I'm like, you can do multiple things. Like you get a business to a point where it's kind of on autopilot. Not so much. Like no business is ever on autopilot, but you have people in charge of each department in different areas to where they're managing it and they're growing that area to where you can kind of step back and be the one driving the ship, not having to be the crew down at the bottom. So that's where I find myself in the real estate sales. What's funny is I find myself, I like sales. Obviously, it's taught me a lot of skills. It's not easy. And I learn more every single day as I, continue to put in the hours and put in the work and repetitions. But I'm always missing something. And what's funny is I sold my last rental in 2021. And I've been missing, it's just a piece that's missing. I feel like I'm not being my true self, not doing that. And I know I did that episode and I was honest about it because the business is where the active income was. And it's starting to come true this year. And I'm doing the math and running numbers, streamlining the business. I'm partnering with another person in Florida, having our whole state team is now agents of the armed forces. We're going to eventually have agents brought on. And I'm like, okay, maybe I actually can get back to doing what I love. I love finding deals and doing that. While I love all my clients that I've helped, at the same time, it's not me being me, because people are just like, oh, I want to, just buy a house and live there and raise a family, and that's great. I just feel like it's not using all my skills. right? I feel my skills are better served in the investment side of the house. It's where it's a lot maybe riskier, but there's a lot more creativity there, and now that's kind of what I'm getting myself into. It's like, all right, I don't have money. Necessarily I don't have money, and I want to get into real estate investing. And I've learned a lot about business credit and things like that. What's funny is I've seen both sides of the house where it's like, oh yeah, you just liquidate some business credit cards. You go out there, you freaking, use that as your down payment. You get the house and it's all great. And then you buy it and then you refinance and all that. Well, I also like to think I'm not a complete freaking idiot. And while I like to joke around that I'm just, I'm an idiot who's just good at asking questions. So, I got blessed last week to meet down with a really good friend from the Marine Corps, and, he's a millionaire at this point. And he's bought 15 properties using this method. So I'm like, well, if one person can do it, I can too. It's the greatest thing I've ever learned. And so he started asking questions like, how do you do it, this and that. And I started to find out, I'm like, okay, so it's not completely all business credit, right? It's a huge risk. Okay. I have one company that, is easily rebranded. This can be rebranded to a property management company, and it's going to handle that side of the house of buying the properties. And I am going to hire a different property manager, but that's the basis of the company. And I'm in a position where I could generate a couple $100,000 in business credit, right? The thing is like, okay, what's the cost of getting that credit and what's the risk? And I'm going to continually share this journey with you. Right now, I'm in the information stage. So I'll share some information of what I'm learning right now. Obviously, always consult with any professional. I don't care if it's your tax, a lawyer, lender, it doesn't matter. Seek your professionals. This is not financial advice. This is just simply what I'm going through in this process. And I'm just going to share what I've learned so far. And I'm sure some of this is going to change. But I'm also the type of person where I'm like, this could help a lot of people that I know. And if I can do it successfully, then all I have to do is take the ones that are serious about doing it and bring them into the loop. So obviously I'm licensed in California and Florida. Doing a lot of research, Florida has a lot of potential. And what was informed to me is that, look, it's easy to start at simple houses, simple starter homes, okay? And Section 8 can be a great way. Now, if you don't know what Section 8 is, Section 8 rentals are where someone is living under they're living in poverty, and the government says, hey, we'll pay most or all of your rent. And each area has what's called a fair market value, fair market rent, which is just I'm still learning more about this, so I'm not some Section 8 god. This is just simply to get your brain turning of the different opportunities out there. And if anything I say on here just confuses you, you can either let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and point you to where I learned some of this information, or you can just get a hold of me anyways, and we'll talk about it. You know what I mean? Maybe just start a getting started in Section 8, group to figure this shit out. So, yeah, Section 8 can be very well because a lot of times it can be a little bit higher than what you normally would get for a rental. Not always. Every market's different. What's funny is I've noticed that in this business credit community, people are like, oh, you can just get all this money and you just go invest it. They fail to kind of mention trust me, if it was as simple as just taking $50,000 and go opening up a Walmart store, an online Walmart store that's done for you, and make $8,000, that'd be great. I know there's gonna be companies out there like Cameron, I found something that does that or whatever. That's fine. Okay. I have looked at that option as well. I personally don't feel it's something I want to get into at this time. I'm staying in my realm of genius, which is going to be in real estate, residential for the time being. And, I've started to really create a buy box. So obviously this is my first rental down the road. I've had a couple buy and holds and also a flip that I lived in for a year and then sold that for a profit. I fixed it up. But this is my first time. I'm like, okay, I need to systematize this. Because my rentals before, it was just kind of snagged. I got lucky, ultimately. One property I did lose money on. That was a good learning experience in a lot of ways. Sewer backed up in the house. It was a disaster. I learned that, wow, if it's an old house, I really got to get the sewer inspected. And honestly, you could do it for every house if you're being fair, because you really just don't know. So, Section 8 rentals to me seem like a good option because a lot of times, especially right now, there are certain markets in Florida we're looking at where you can find properties $150,000 and less. So your down payment and closing costs to get into the property are a little bit lower. Also, me and my partner are licensed there. So What that means is we can, if the property happens to be on market, now most likely we will have to go off market, but if a property is on market by some chance, we can 50-50 that and get the commission on our sales side. And obviously that helps towards our cap for the EXP and builds that route, which is funny. Is like you're getting, you're capping yourself at EXP of being your own client. It's pretty funny. But essentially that's like one of the reasons we chose Florida. So that's where I'm going to be, officially finally moving there this summer. And Section 8s are great. So what I'm looking, my buy box is simple. What I've come up with all this research was I'm looking for a 3-bed, 2-bath. Maybe it could be a 4. I'm open to higher properties, but because of the price point, most likely I'm going to be 3-bed, 2-bath, under 1,200 square feet, no garage. Because let's be honest, if someone's in Section 8, they just need the space to live. They need help to live. You don't need all this fancy stuff in a Section 8 rental. Now take care of it. My intention is to be a good landlord and to fix the place up, have it look nice, put tenants in place that want to stay there, are happy to get the help, and understand that, hey, I shouldn't take this for granted, right? Overall goal, B neighborhoods, looking for properties like C or D properties that need some work. Now, right now, I'm going to start slow. My intention is to only have to do about up to 20 grand of work for a property when I take it over. I would like to find properties. So depending on what zip code I'm looking at, I'm going to look at the average property. I would like to get 15% below the average sale price for that size of property in that zip code. It's 3-bed, 2-bath, less than 1,200 square feet, approximately. If it's like 1,256, I'm not freaking out about it, but less than 1,200 square feet, no garage. It can have a carport. I don't care. And not need like crazy renovations, like maybe 20K worth of work. All right. That way, in 12, 18 months, I have some room to refinance the property. Now, obviously, I don't have any money. I'm broke. So how am I looking at getting into this? Well, let's talk about the business credit thing up front. I've started doing more research into it. My buddy gave me his course, and I went through all that, and I feel really now I just put a lot of time into learning about this. My issue with it is they don't talk about the cons as much. Okay, like I could go right now with my seasoned business, go to a specific bank and get $100,000. No documentation required. They'll probably do a soft pull on my credit. That's it. Doesn't report on my personal credit or anything, and I have to pay however much I pull, whether it's $1 or that full 100 grand. I pay 1.5% back each month is my liability towards that. Okay, and that sounds all well and good. The thing is you have to then factor in that cost into the deal. So it makes it a little bit trickier. Okay. Now, another downfall is you can't just have all this credit and you can't just put the cash in your account. It has to be what's called seasoned. So if you ever gotten a mortgage, they're like, oh, I need the last 2 months of bank statements. That's because they don't want you to all of a sudden show up being like, look, I got 100 grand out of nowhere. Whoa, no, not allowed, not okay. Okay. Traditional banks. All right. We're not talking about hard money lenders. We're not talking about any other loan products. We're just talking about traditional 20% down rental loans. Okay. From Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Right. So that's one concern I have is I'm like, okay, so I could pull that money now and leave it in there for 60 days worth of bank statements. The problem is then I have to service that payment that whole time. And until the money's seasoned, I can't even get a pre-approval, right? So it's probably going to end up being like 4 or 5 months, maybe even more, depending how long it takes me to get a deal. So that's like the more expensive option, right? If the money is now, that's why it's a mix. Now, what I found out is what a lot of guys will do is they will save up the down payment to get the first property. So they'll use their own cash to get the property, and then they pull the credit to pay themselves back. All right. And then that gives enough time to get the rental ready. And then by that point, that money they pulled is now 60 days seasoned, and then they rinse and repeat, right? Now you have to be careful because obviously there has to be a lender that's willing to play ball with that. So always make sure you talk with the right professionals, make sure it's going to work. But I do know people have done it. A lot have. Sometimes they'll use the credit money just for the renovations instead. So they're not pulling as much potentially, right? And now if you can get 0% interest credit cards, you could do like balance transfers. If for 18 months you can't refinance. Right now rates are high, right? Like 7% if you're going to get a rental loan, maybe a little bit higher. So that's one concern. That's why I'm leaning towards, I'm like, do I want to pull all that money as a down payment and closing cost coverage? Or because I do have commission in, and now that I'm getting some money into my business, do I divert as much as I don't need for my family? Do I just keep diverting as much of that commission as possible into this, which is a longer play? But do I use the business credit, the 0% business credit, or maybe like the line of credit from like these institutions, and do I go out and set up a cold calling team and start some marketing off market, right? Because even if I find a deal and it doesn't work for me, I could wholesale it, right? If you don't know what that means I have a property, seller's like, I want to sell it, I'm going to sell it to you. Great. They agree that I'm going to wholesale it. They understand the concept, which means I'm going to let's say I buy the home for $100,000. Home's worth about, let's say it's worth, easy math, say it's worth $130,000. All right. Well, let's say it's worth $150,000, but it needs like about $20,000 worth of work. So I know an investor will pay $130,000. I come in and I say, hey, I'll give you $100,000. And they're like, okay. Oh no, I'll give you, let's say $110,000. Like, okay, great. And then what happens is I assign the contract for an extra $20,000. Or it could be less, maybe it could be more, but let's say it's like between $5,000 and $20,000 assignment fee to the investor. So the investor buys it for $130,000. And then I'm the middleman, title company sends me my check, and then boom, seller sold their house, investor got their property, I pocket the middle. All right? Because that's the route that I'm probably leaning towards. And what's funny is like it seems simple, right? Like, Cameron, why don't you just go out there and buy the deal? So, I could. The thing is, when you don't have money, I am in a position where, because I'm very focused on helping veterans and them build wealth, it already fits into the business plan model of our real estate team. So in reality, it's just another stool of the leg that we're going to be building here. And what's funny is this is where I thrive. And so I think it's something I should have gone back to sooner. But I realized before that I don't know why I kept both businesses separate, and now I get to join them together because thankfully my partner loves running the real estate team. He loves that. And because I was able to find a great partner, now I don't have to be the one running all that show. I can work on the training company and this. So in my mind, I'm like, all right. So I'm leaning towards, I'm like, I probably should be in a position where I should just start finding deals. Because if I can find deals and I can create the team and the systems to find the deals, money will come. It is. Now, that means networking has to go in overdrive. I got to start finding a buyer's list. Who's willing to buy properties, these residential properties, once I find them? I need to figure out what's my plan. If a deal comes across my desk, how am I preparing myself to purchase that property? I'm keeping my mind open to creative options here. Okay? Is someone willing to sell or finance me a property? Are they willing to do a subject to transaction where they keep the loan on the property, I take over the title, and maybe do the payback in the middle, right? It could be a lease option allowing me to rent out the property, but I still don't like that one too much. It's kind of a last resort option. Or I do this credit method and make sure I have the money in place to purchase the property, right? There's a lot of ways to go about this. What I do know is I know my buy box. And the Section 8 rentals, the more I learn about it, the more I'm like, this seems like I could fit this for me, ultimately. And a lot of people are like, oh, they're going to trash your place and all this. Like, it's like any landlording thing. Like, you have to have your systems and processes in place. And I'm blessed enough to have the criteria for the tenants I'm looking for. I have everything in place, the software to manage it. The biggest thing is I need to start building the team. Reaching out to agents, talking to lenders, who's going to be my go-to lenders for what situations and how. What type of properties am I looking for, which I kind of already listed my buy box. And, that's my box, meaning like that is my jam. I'm not trying to go outside of that, right? Like I have my plan, I'm going to stick with it, right? I'm not trying to do crazy things. Like we are going to be good at one thing and one type of property. And then once we get good at that, we can move on to the next. So, if you're in a position where you don't have money, you can get business credit. And what that is like you open an LLC, and now until it's 2 years old, you don't have as many of the big lines of credits that I mentioned before, but you can start with relationships, Chase Bank, PNC Bank, Wells Fargo, all these banks, you start getting business credit cards, and there are companies like Plastique, Plastiq, and there's other ones, I think Melio's another one, where they will liquidate. Now, what that means is they're invoicing you the money, they're taking the money, they'll take like 5 to 10%, and then they'll give it back to you. It's a little weird how it is, and it's a huge gray area if I'm being honest with you. What's funny is I've seen people are like, oh, that's illegal. What's funny is I have seen people, like, it happens all the time with credit cards, like Chase Bank, right? I got this too. Like, I got 30 grand worth of credit card, 0% interest for 12 months from Chase Bank, 30 grand. And they give you a check in the mail, or they send it like shortly after, where you can liquidate, you can write a check to yourself for 30 grand and take it to the bank for the credit cards and to Chase. And I've seen people, they're okay with it. They don't give a crap. So it's crazy, right? Because the bank knows that, hey, as long as you're paying, like, they're making money, right? Like, they're getting their interest on those credit cards for that eventually. Like, it's going to come through. They're banking and you not paying. So it's funny. So when I start seeing situations like that, I'm like, okay, I'm less nervous about it. But a word of caution, like, when you're pulling that much credit, you're like double leveraging yourself. Okay, it's a good thing, but it's a double-edged sword, and that swing comes back in the other direction. It's going to happen eventually, and you're going to have what's your backup plan. So if that property doesn't work out, remember, it's real estate. The renovation could not go right. You could have a trash tenant, right? The cool thing about Section 8 is it does give you a little bit more power. Now, Florida, a lot more landlord power. That's why I'm totally okay with it. Downfall is, like, it seems like prices are going to be a little bit higher than we initially wanted to get into the deal. But that's why me and my partner are talking about it. We're like, hey, how about we take all of our income from our companies that we're partnered with, which is just 2 right now, and we divert it into buying properties, because we both have the same game plan. How fast can we build it? The only issue at that point isn't necessarily can we fund these properties. It's how can we find the deals ultimately. And that's why people always start with like, oh, how do I get into real estate with no freaking money? I'm like, honestly, my way I'm focusing on this for me is I'm like, how can I just find the property? Because if you can find the deals, you can figure it the F out. And it's true, you can figure it out. And that's kind of where I'm going right now. So if you watch this far, ultimately, what am I doing? I'm trying to figure out a plan on how can I'm figuring out 2 things. All right? I know I can get the money. It sucks that I'd have to season it. I do know some people who potentially could partner with me and give me the money. But all in all, I'm figuring out what's my game plan to find the deals, right? Just like I've done cold calling before, I've done all that. I'm actually creating a business plan like I didn't do before with my rental business. How am I going to find the deals? Because don't forget, being an agent, if this person wants to sell normally on the market, I can do that too. So Florida's a great place to start with this. And I'm starting with the cheaper price homes, okay? And the cool thing is my goal is like, running numbers is like there's a good chance we could profit like $600 net per month. Approximately on these properties in the right area. Maybe it could be, but now that's after the gap funding. So gap funding is using that credit to pay it off. Don't forget, you can technically get money from friends and family and do the same concept, saying, hey, I'll give you this % back on the money you give me. Okay? So it doesn't have to be from credit cards. If you have someone in your family that has the money and they're willing to give it to your business, you still have to season it. Potentially, talk to your lender. Could be that way is probably a little bit less scary, but they have the 50 grand. Say, hey, give you 50 grand. I'll give you 5% back, or set up a monthly payment plan, or whatever you want to do. That could work too. Heck, I pulled money from my mother-in-law when I bought my first rental property. All right, and paid her back. So a lot of ways to go about this process. It all just depends on the lender and making sure that they are cool with what you're doing. All right. But yeah, starting with no money, that's kind of where my brain's going right now with this. I really look forward to updating along this process and occasionally having these episodes to where I can update you and go through the process as I kind of figure out this journey, because I'm really determined. If like getting involved in no money, now I get to do it. It's fun to me. Like I'm blessed enough to have the money coming in from other sources. I'm continuing to grow those. That this people are like, oh, Cameron, what are your hobbies? You know what? I really love doing this. I love the game of business. I love the game. And like with rentals, it's a game. It's all just a game. Like how can you find the people that raise their hand saying, I want to sell? Like one example for marketing that I've toyed with is if I'm willing to allocate, right? Now people are like, Cameron, like, I don't have the money for this. I've seen people with brand new 6-month-old LLCs or less get like 50, 80 grand and 0% funding. So don't tell me you can't get money. I now believe there's no way you can't get money. The question is can you do it smartly enough to do it? Now, don't feel shamed with partnering with someone, but you gotta make sure you're willing to take that risk, because it is like double the risk. Investing in real estate is already risky, and doing this method I think is extra risky. But without risk, there's no reward. And personally, my plan is maybe you use that business credit to get you to that first 10 deals. But after that, if you're smart with your money and you just keep putting into the bank account your cash flow, that becomes the seed money to continue to grow and grow and grow. Because remember, a lot of the money is going to come back from your finances. So the goal is, can you buy a home below market to where when the rates eventually maybe go down a little bit, or you get some equity in the home, you can refinance, pull up to 70% of that cash out, pay off your debt that you used, or pay yourself to move into the next property. So there's a lot of ways to go about this, and this is ultimately, like, we're gonna figure this out together. I mean, if you were watching this episode thinking you were gonna get like some game plan and get into real estate with no money, I don't know if I helped you. I hope I did, because ultimately it really comes down to is I'm same stuff I'm going through is how can I find deals, and right now I'm going through the process of verifying that business credit. Ultimately, like, I think I'm going to get at least one property with it, fully taking that risk. I want to see it in action. I want to see it work. And what's great about being an agent is I have connection to thousands of other agents in Facebook groups, EXP Realty. And really, once now that I'm formulating my buy box, we're choosing the areas we're going to go into. And once we get the funding aspect down, and what problems we're going to solve and all that, and we have our buy box, it's going to blast it out there. Hey, who's got a property, needs some work, whatever. And then we're just going to start looking at properties, right? It's like anything. Like just sitting down saying, I'm just waiting for a property. That's stupid, right? You have no money, you can get real estate with no money, all right? But it all starts with finding the deals. So that's kind of where my brain's going with it right now. And if you have any questions about this concept, how it can work with you, anything I know about business funding, like I said, in the description, there's always a way to get me on the phone. So go to that link, book a call with me, and it's 15 minutes. We'll talk through shit. Hey, look, I never had anyone that, when I was getting up in the journey, like really even until recently, I felt like no one understood what I was going through. Ultimately, turns out there's a lot of people. Now, even though they're in business, doesn't mean they're your type, but still, get me on the phone, or you can contact in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and if you're on the podcast, hey, leave a rating and review, guys. Look, I got nothing. I got very few reviews on this podcast. It's brand new. I know there's like only a couple of you downloading it on the watch only version, the listen only. But hey, if you can leave a rating and review, I would greatly appreciate it. And like I said, guys, that link to get me on the phone, hey, at the time of this recording, it's still there. So go ahead, schedule that call, get me on the phone. Let's talk. Let's figure it out. Maybe we can partner on something. Who the heck knows? But until next time, guys, see you later.